Let me turn it over to you, Dave, if you'd like to do a more formal introduction of Scott.
Thank you. I'm just so pleased to have Scott Anderson with us. I think for those of you in Utah, Scott needs no introduction. He was the CEO of Zions Bank, the largest bank in Utah, for 25 years. And a article in the Salt Lake Tribune some years ago caught my attention when they named him the unofficial governor of Utah because of the influence that he has had. While he stepped down as the CEO, he's still at this point chair of the Zions Bank Advisory Board, still involved there. And he is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. A couple of things that have caught my attention, and hopefully I'm representing these correctly, but the Zions Bank just a couple of years ago opened their new corporate campus. And it's described as the largest sustainability architecture project in the state of Utah. 400,000 square foot building with 2,000 solar panels and 181 electric car chargers that the employees can charge their cars without cost. And I'm sure there's many other things about it. It's a LEED platinum building, really a major project, but also I think a demonstration for the community what could be done. And Scott also caught my attention because he was the co-chair of the Utah Clean Energy Capital Campaign. They recently created this Climate Innovation Center, which is a net zero building, which is also kind of a demonstration building. And he's been involved with a lot of other things. So Scott, it's just such a pleasure for you to join us today. And I'll turn the time over to you.
Well, thank you very much. And it's a pleasure for me to be with you all. And I appreciate this invitation to share with you some of my thoughts regarding our environmental and climate stewardship. I have to say, I feel some pressure speaking to you.
Recording in progress.
Brother and sister-in-law, Jeff and Kathy, on the line today. I hope I don't embarrass them or misspeak, but I really think that this topic is a matter of really great significance that I'm heavily involved in. But let me begin my remarks today by sharing with you my spiritual roots of my conversion to environmentalism. I will note that while the leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ typically avoid making statements or taking positions on social issues, they have not been silent on this issue. President Dallin H. Oaks warned against global warming in 2017, and Bishop Kazay of the presiding bishopric addressed caring for the Earth's resources in a major talk he gave on the topic in 2022. And almost exactly 1 year ago, Elder D. Todd Christofferson and the church's sustainability manager with other general authorities participated in a 4-day environmental conference in Brazil with representatives from 10 South American countries that the church sponsored, with the theme of our stewardship of God's creation. And at that conference, Elder Christofferson said, and let me quote from his remarks, "The creation of this marvelous world in which we live in is not an end in itself. It is the means by which our Heavenly Father's eternal designs can be accomplished. This earth and everything in it, the towering mountains, the vast oceans, the fertile plains, the green valleys, the meandering rivers, the arid deserts, the innumerable variety of plants, insects, birds, and animals, everything, absolutely everything, was created for one purpose: to enable his sons and daughters to inherit exaltation and eternal life in eternal family units." In Genesis, we're told that God created our earth and its heaven and all forms of life, including man and woman, in 6 days. And after he created man and woman, he blessed them and said unto them, "Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth." And I love that comment, to replenish the earth. And then we read in Genesis 2:15, "And the Lord took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it." The prophet Joseph Smith emphasized the importance of environmental stewardship throughout the context of his teachings, and Brigham Young expanded Joseph's ideas, advocating for sustainable practice and a harmonious relationship with nature. He emphasized the need for proper land use, irrigation, and farming techniques that would benefit both the community and the environment. Brigham Young often spoke about the importance of preserving natural resources for future generations and encouraged members of the church to be mindful of their impact on the earth. These early church leaders laid a foundational understanding of environmental stewardship, I believe, within the context of our beliefs, highlighting the idea that caring for the earth is part of living a faithful life. From these verses from the Bible and from these teachings come my belief in the principle of environmental stewardship, which includes managing resources wisely and respecting the environment as part of God's creation. We are, in fact, to replenish the earth. We are to dress it, and we are to keep it. And I saw this play out in the way my grandparents, who were farmers in Paris, Idaho, cherished their land and took care of it. And in the way my wife's family ranched their land, being careful to replenish it and use it in a sustainable way for the next generation. And I would consider these people the best environmentalists I've ever met, even though they never considered themselves environmentalists, but they understood what it meant and what it took to sustain our environment better than any governmental bureaucrat. And let me illustrate this with a family story. My father-in-law would graze his cows on land he leased from the federal government adjacent to the shores of Great Salt Lake. He was careful that the land was not overgrazed and that the water was not depleted. Some government bureaucrats thought that his grazing cows were destroying the land and harming it to the detriment of the land and the water and the migrant birds that were stopping there. They forced him to give up his leases and stop grazing his cows there, which he did. And then they let the land go wild. In a few years, they came back to my father-in-law and asked him to start grazing his cows again, because they realized that he had taken better care of the land than when it was let go wild. And so my father brought back his cows, he grazed them there, the land was replenished, and the migrant birds came back and stopping there. With that as background, let me tell you that I consider myself as a conservative environmentalist and what I would also call as a business environmentalist. And I believe that the principles of conservatism can and should inform effective environmental stewardship. And what do I mean by this? I contend that the fundamental principles of conservatism, responsibility, stewardship, and respect for tradition align closely with environmental efforts as they emphasize caring for our planet for the benefit of future generations. As a business environmentalist, I call for a range of market-based solutions on environmental issues, championing technology and technological innovation and entrepreneurships as key drivers for change. I also believe that free market principles can lead to effective and sustainable environmental practices without heavy-handed government intervention. The environmental issues we face provide opportunities, I believe, for innovation and business and leadership rather than burdensome regulations. As we engage in environmental issues and discussions, we need to focus on shared values, such as love for the land and a commitment to future generations. And I believe that this brings everyone together on these issues and can create a more unified, inclusive, and effective approach to solving environmental challenges. We need to reimagine environmentalism and align it with conservative values and emphasize stewardship, innovation, and bipartisan collaboration. In the end, a healthy planet is a shared responsibility and a shared blessing for all. We need to apply the Utah way in reducing air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, while at the same time keeping our economy strong and supporting Utah's thriving industries. It will take government working closely with businesses, think tanks, universities, and individuals to accomplish our goal of having a healthier planet and cleaner air and conserving our water. And this will lead to a healthier lifestyle for our people and a stronger economy. Moreover, every effort needs to be taken to prevent or minimize economic dislocation from policy and market changes, and to recognize the unique challenges facing vulnerable and rural populations. As we think about conservative entrepreneurism and environmentalism, we need to be clear about the goals that are driving our actions. And I think these goals were clearly put in place in 2020 that were stated in the Utah Climate and Clean Air Compact that Clean Energy put out. And in that compact, the following 6 principles were outlined. First, health and well-being of Utah families and the prosperity of Utah communities. Second, climate and air quality, and finding solutions that will protect our climate, improve our air quality, and stress water conservation. 3, economy, and supporting our business and taking actions that will benefit Utah's agriculture, tourism, technology, manufacturing, and energy sectors while improving our air quality. And 4, re-energize Utah by taking actions that will lead to rapid advancements in technology and a global economic and energy revolution. And 5, rural Utah by prioritizing economic development and investing in rural areas impacted by changing energy markets. And lastly, leadership and the Utah way of collaborating, leading on, and investing in challenging issues with collaborative solutions. In short, our goal in this is to ensure a healthy, productive, and prosperous future for all Utahns. Important industries such as agriculture, mining, tourism, outdoor recreation, manufacturing, technology, and energy will benefit from Utah's climate and clean air management. So it's up to us to take action, and our actions can create a ripple effect of positive change, beginning here in Utah and inspiring others to take concrete steps. And let me give you a couple of examples of this. The first is what David mentioned. A couple of years ago, we built a new technology complex out in Midvale on the site of a former Sharon Steel Mill EPA Superfund site. This was a 400,000 square foot building built for 2,000 employees, and we built it as a Platinum LEED certified building, which I believe is still the largest Platinum LEED certified building in the state of Utah. And we did this by maximizing natural light and views for offices and workplaces. We put in a healthy food cafe. We put in bike lockers and community park and pickleball courts and walk path. We have shareable e-bikes, a community garden, and it's close to the light rail station. And we constructed it with low VOC emitting materials, with triple pane glass, and with ultra efficient heating and cooling systems. It's an all electric building. And as David said, 75% of the electricity used in the building is actually produced on site with over 2,000 solar panels. And we have 181, as David mentioned, electric vehicle charging stations that we offer free of charge to the community and to our employees. And I believe this is the largest number of electrical vehicle charging stations in any public or private building in Utah. The property is built on a bluff overlooking the Jordan River Parkway. And so we did landscaping that was environmentally and water efficient and that reflected and supported the regional habitat. We had hoped that this building would in fact be operated at a lower occupancy cost than our other 5 buildings did, which we closed down when we moved them into this new campus. And in fact, it's 20% more efficient than those buildings. And it's a building that our employees love to come to and work at, even post-COVID, where a lot of people are working from home. And it's a building that we're very proud of, and we hope is an example for other businesses to copy as they build new structures. The second example is the use of technology. I believe that we really can't solve the climate issues entirely without the use of technology. And so we sponsored and funded a climate prize in 2022 at the University of Utah that was designed to foster innovative solutions to climate-related issues. And we funded it with $1.5 million, which made it the largest university-affiliated climate prize in the world, as far as I know. And the goal was to encourage students and faculty and businesses and researchers around the world to develop products and projects that address sustainability, environmental impact, and climate resilience. The 2023 winner of this was a Seattle-based company called Lumen Bioscience. They beat out another 77 international teams with their proposal to drastically reduce methane emissions from dairy and beef cattle using a patented mixtures of enzyme proteins. Methane, as you know, is behind at least 25% of today's global warming, according to the Environmental Defense Fund, and livestock is the single largest contributor to that. Another example is the Cedar City company, Back to Life, that has developed a product called H2 Organic, a bacteria that is placed in the soil and that reduces water usage by 70% and also reduces the amount of fertilizer needed, and yet increases the production per acre by 20%, which has huge water and environmental impact. And the last example I would give is the American Conservative Coalition, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to mobilizing conservative young college students around the country on environmental action. Their principles include conservation, natural heritage, localism, capitalism, innovation, and balance. And I mentioned to David that we are hosting with Clean Energy a breakfast on Tuesday, October 22nd at 8 in the morning at the Elda Club, where the founder of the American Conservative Coalition, Benji Baker, is about to come and speak, and he will be joined by Congressman John Curtis, and together they will have a discussion following his remarks, moderated by Becky
Edwards.
Yeah, thank you. So in the end, as good stewards of replenishing the earth, dressing it and caring for it, we need to adopt emission reduction goals and measure the results. We need to seek technological solutions to critical climate issues, including perhaps the establishment of a state-funded climate laboratory. We need to accelerate quality growth efforts that will provide more transportation options, preserve open spaces, improve energy efficiency, and support economic development. And we need to, as I've already mentioned, prioritize economic development at all levels with all of our communities, especially our rural communities. And we need to become a leader in national discussions about how to harness the power of market forces and new technologies to reduce carbon emissions in a way that protects health and sustains economic development. In closing, I want to share the words of Bishop L. Todd Budge, the second counselor in the church's presiding bishopric. He said these words in a speech that he gave at the opening of the October 22nd, October 2022 session of Utah Valley University's Why It Matters conference. He said, "When it comes to taking care of the earth, we cannot afford to think only of today. The consequences of our actions, for better or worse, accumulate into the future and are sometimes felt only generations later. Stewardship requires feet and hands at work in the present with a gaze fixed on the future." I conclude my remarks with an endorsement of his last words in his speech, where he said, "We have an obligation to be good stewards, to pass to future generations an earth better than we found it, through habits and values of wise stewardship. We have the power within us to not only conserve and preserve, but to be co-creators with God in beautifying and replenishing the earth. In doing so, we will not only show our reverence and love for God, the Creator, but love for his greatest creation, each of us, humankind." Thank you very much, and it's nice to be with you and share these comments with you.
Wow, there's a lot to take in, Scott.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's
I hope I didn't
go
embarrass you.
ahead, Dave.
Well, and I would say, as Scott's brother, he didn't embarrass me. He made me very proud. Thanks, Scott. Kathy and I really loved it.
Is it opened up for questions?
Yeah, it's open for questions. Ian, you got one?
I'm just curious as to whether he knows what the additional cost, like in a percentage wise, was of making this a lead building versus if they hadn't done that, and whether that cost was a significant impact to their bottom line. You know, I know they would be amortizing it over a number of years, but I'm just wondering what the costs are to businesses to go green like that.
Actually, what we found is that the cost was not, it was about the same as if we had done it in a more traditional way. It was just doing it in a different way. And as we build it, as I said, we took 5 separate buildings around the West Valley, and we closed those down and moved them all into this building. And as I said, the operating costs ended up to be 20% less than those 5 buildings. We ended up with a larger structure, and the construction was built so that we didn't impact the Sharon Mill cleanup. We built the building actually on stilts, so there's no basement to it, and we used material that was actually was less expensive than other building materials. So we ended up coming in under budget, ahead of schedule, even though it was built during COVID. And it has proved to be really a wonderful addition to our buildings.
Thank you.
Scott, I've got a question. I'm just going to jump in. I didn't raise my hand, but you have had this important role at Zions Bank, and as an institution, do you get a sense of the need to be good climate stewards permeating the institution, or has it been an executive policy? How did as an institution it come to do this? I mean, I know that banks pay attention to risk and the uncertainties and complications that would come with climate change and so forth, but as an institution, how did that transition take place to understanding that?
Well, it came through 2 ways. The first, and probably the most important, was through our risk framework, where as all banks, you develop a risk framework as you go about doing your business, which impacts how you lend, who you lend to, how you evaluate the risk of lending to different organizations. And as you do that, if you lend to a farm or ranch or an ag group, you have to take in consideration such things as weather, the cost of fertilizer, of all of these things that can have an economic impact to it. As you fund loans for other businesses. You also have to take in the risk associated with that. And so from the very beginning, our risk framework looked at environmental issues as part of the issues we had to evaluate and compensate for.
Yeah.
I could also mention that over the years, the federal government has stepped in and they have required, and in fact are considering even more regulations that would require banks to report on carbon emissions, not only that they do as a bank, but also that their customers do, and how it's being compensated for, and how it could impact the risk of the loan not being repaid. Obviously, that costs a lot of money and a lot of data gathering to do that responsibly. And so the issues we face are both done because we feel it important, because it's part of our risk framework, but also because we're increasingly required to do it. And I think the federal government is trying to use banks in this sense as a backdoor method of impacting and achieving some of their social environmental goals so they can't get through Congress. I would also say that as an organization, we believe strongly in trying to be as efficient operators as we can, and we do that to reduce costs and like I said, become more efficient. And we do that by how we handle our waste, how we handle our water, how we handle our electrical use, and we measure our kilowatt use. And each year we have brought down those costs and brought down those issues and have reduced our carbon footprint. So we are very involved in this issue, both as a business and seeing it as making us more profitable and more sustainable, as well as ensuring that the risk we take as lenders are carefully considered and compensated for.
Right. Thank
Hey,
you very much.
Tom, we had a really good question from our good friend Ralph Becker posted on chat, and I know Soren has his hand up
Yeah.
too. His question was, he wanted to thank you for your incredible climate leadership. And he said the Inflation Reduction Act was a market-based approach to climate pollutant reduction. What is your view of that approach?
Well, if you know, if he's looking at well, there are a couple of things. Let me say, and probably the biggest one is whether, you know, we can enact laws that will allow people to pay for carbon usage, their carbon usage. And you know, Mitt Romney has been very supportive of that in Congress. You know, I think there's some good things about it. I think there's some risks with it. I think instead of paying to use carbon issues, if you will, that it's better if we conserve and actually reduce our carbon usage.
Let's get to Soren. Soren, your hand's up.
I got to unmute here. Well, let me first take the opportunity because, Scott, I've never had a chance to say thank you. Many of you know I work with the Jordan River Commission, and we recognized a couple of years ago the incredible work that Zions Bank and their parent company, Zions Bank Corporation, have done to support the work around the Jordan River restoration. And so, Scott, I want to just, I guess this isn't public, but it's more public than I've had a chance to do with you, and say thank you for your support and leadership for the first decade of the Jordan River Commission's existence, to support just a lot of leadership.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. One of our early employees was Clayton Christensen, who grew up in Rose Park, and He went on to be a business professor at the Harvard Business School. And as a teenager, he created the Jordan River Yacht Club, as some of you may know. And he encouraged us strongly to participate in the Jordan River project, that it was something that we needed as a community. And I still think that if we can do that successfully, it'll be a fabulous project. And we're
Well,
getting.
I don't know if a lot of people outside of Midvale City understand the work that was done to reclaim that Sharon Steel site, which was a federal Superfund site. But it's pretty amazing what's happening there, and Zions Bank has been just a leader. I do have a question for you. Speaking to you as somebody that shares your faith, I remember years ago, as Ralph Becker, who's on the call, and I were serving as elected leaders in Salt Lake, working with the church on the development of the City Creek project downtown. And a lot of people don't know that that was a pilot project for LEED certification of entire communities, not just individual buildings. And I remember having a conversation with Bishop Burton, R. Harold Burton, who was the presiding bishop at the time, and saying, we need to share what the church is doing. You know, it's interesting. There was a poll released about a year ago that indicated that Latter-day Saints, among people of different faith communities, have a strong connection to nature. But for some of the most pressing issues like climate change and air quality, they're among the lowest of faith communities in their support for action to address the climate crisis. And I'm curious, from your perspective as a person of faith and as a business leader, how do we encourage our Latter-day Saint community to care about such a huge issue? Because there's still a lot of skeptics, including among some of our elected officials, that just don't see it as the crisis that we're watching unfold. I mean, the hurricanes that affected my family in Florida and so many people, one of the worst natural disasters in our recent history. How do we collectively, as a faith community, care about climate change? I'm curious about what your perspective is on that. You probably see it.
Well, I agree with you, and I think, and that's why I started out my remarks by sort of my outlining my spiritual roots of my conversion to the importance of mitigating climate change. And I think, as I outlined, that if you go back in the church from the very beginning, going back to Joseph Smith and Brigham Young and all the way up, all of the leaders have supported taking good care of the earth. I think, you know, the lay membership may not see it or recognize it or support it as much as they should, but it's there. And I think when you look at what the church is doing to giving up 1 million square feet of water to help the Great Salt Lake refill, if you will, of supporting energy efficient buildings throughout their chapels. All of this is done because they believe that we're going to be held accountable as a people to God for how we have handled the environment and passed it on. I don't know how we can, you know, maybe if it's more having a more public discussion in our church meetings about it, of outlining more what people can do. I think that one of the things that I think Clean Air did so well is this climate impact that we encouraged faith communities as well as businesses and nonprofits to sign, and all of the faith communities have signed on to it. But it's clearly there in my faith community, I believe.
Great. Thank you so much. Rachel, I think your hand was up next.
Okay, I unmuted. Thank you. Scott, I really admire your commitment to energy efficiency and fiscal responsibility. And I think it's impressive, especially given the impact of Zions Bank Corp in Utah and you know, farther afield. But I've actually recently gone back to school, and my research is actually a sort of amalgam of local regenerative textile economies. And some of my rabbit hole learning has been in seeing different kinds of economic models that are maybe modifications of the current one. I've seen donut economics, regenerative economics, things like that. And it seems like from researching it, that there's a lot of potential there, but I'm curious to know from your perspective whether there's much traction for that or support for that within the banking community, the business community, and basically a lot of it's around modifying growth models and material consumption. And so just curious your thoughts about that.
Yeah, well, as I said earlier, I think that different financial institutions are looking at this in different ways, and it's built into their internal risk framework. And some have looked at different issues and said, we're not going to get involved in financing mineral extraction or oil and gas or coal mining because we think the environmental risks are too great and you can't compensate for it. And so they have stopped funding those things. Others, and we're included in this camp, think that there are ways that these things can be done environmentally friendly, especially with carbon sequestration, a technology that has been developed at the University of Utah that pulls carbon out of the air, specifically around coal burning plants, electrical plants, and puts it down into the salt mines, making it greener. And so by developing these risk frameworks, I think that helps businesses that are involved in some of these crucial areas look at how they can become greener or more environmentally friendly, so they can fit in with these risk frameworks and obtain financing. If they don't, they can't obtain financing, and that becomes an issue for their growth.
Yeah, Dave Bolland.
Oh, thanks. I couldn't find how to put a yellow hand up, so appreciate you seeing my hand. Hey, we know that sometimes our individual actions will stir action with others. You know, if people put a solar panels on their roof, it's more likely that their neighbors will do it too. I wonder if that same thing has happened at all with your new corporate headquarters. I know you hosted the Envision Utah board there, and you're certainly, you know, exposing a lot of people to it. Do you have any sense yet for whether that has spurred action among other people in the community, other business leaders in the community?
Well, we've had a number of businesses come and go through the building, and they've asked to look at how we financed it and the cost of it and the return on investment for it. And so I think people are looking at it and realizing that you can build a LEEDS building like this, and that in fact it's not more expensive to do, and that it will lower your operating costs going forward. So there's a very positive ROI on it. And you end up with a building that's more environmental friendly, that's beautiful, and that your employees want to be in, but also that's less costly to operate. So I hope that it's helping others and is an example for others of what can be done.
Bob, if there's nobody else, I got one more.
Okay.
I don't want to take all the time.
No, go for it.
You mentioned the Climate and Clean Air Compact, which I think, from my standpoint in Citizens Climate Lobby, was a major step forward in opening the conversation among leaders. And, you know, so that brought together leaders in Utah from a whole variety of things to agree to those 6 points that you made. And now I understand. I'm pretty sure you were one of the original members of that, weren't you? Or certainly early on. Yeah.
I was.
Yeah. So there were maybe 10 or 15 of you. Now there's 200 of you. Do you have any sense for the impact of that? Like say from my standpoint, just talking to people and dealing with climate, I think it's been really valuable just to open up the conversation, but it maybe that's kind of soft, how you can judge the impact of it, but yeah.
I think it has a very positive impact. After it came out, we went to the legislature and we helped fund, and the legislature put $500,000 into putting on or commissioning the Kim Gardner Policy Institute to do a roadmap of projects and legislation that the state legislature and that the state could adopt that would meet some of these goals in carbon emission reduction that's outlined in the compact. And the Kim Gardner Institute did this, and they did a fabulous job. They dug up a research policy that John Huntsman had done while he was governor that had sort of been forgotten about and never acted on. And the legislature has used this roadmap that I think was really attributed and came out of the compact to adopt some policy measures that have had some real impact on the economy. One of the most notable is the work on the Great Salt Lake and ensuring that it doesn't dry out.
Scott, I've got another question. I don't want to take up all the time. Any other questions from anybody else before I jump in with this?
And this might have to be the last one here because I know Scott has to leave at 6.
Okay. Oh, I hope this is worth it. So I also want to ask about the Utah Compact of Clean Energy. I'm from California, and I've been going back to Utah for some of our efforts and our meetings there. And number 6 in the 6 principles was leadership and the Utah way of collaborating. Can you talk about that a little bit? I'm from California, and it's quite different here. And when I was in Utah and watching the news, I actually saw people, panelists sitting there on the news, acting respectful to each other. I was absolutely floored. We never see that out here. What's that about? Without being glib, is there any insight you can give us on how that respect is shared?
Well, I think it ends up coming out of the idea that while we may have different views on issues that we face, that we all recognize that we're part of the same community and that we all have an interest in making our community better and safer and passing on a better community and a better world to future generations. And that allows us to put aside some of our differences, to negotiate and to find solutions that we can all believe in and that we can support going forward. And that's what I meant when I said earlier that we all love the environment and that we have here in Utah. We love our mountains, we love our lakes, we love our deserts. We all are concerned about clean air. We all are concerned about water conservation and Great Salt Lake, regardless of your political views. And by emphasizing where we do have a consensus, that allows us to move forward. And I think that's what, at least how I would describe the secret sauce of Utah in coming together and collaborating and making sure that we are moving forward, regardless of our political beliefs.
Great. Thank you so much.
Good. Well, I need to drop off, but thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Scott.
Bye-bye.